My name's Ian Josephs. I run a site called Forced Adoption and try and help mothers especially, but fathers also, whose children have been taken. Now, what I'd like to just try and do shortly is to say what is wrong, then why it's gone wrong, and then what can be done to put it right. So firstly, what's wrong? Well, social workers were formed in 1948 to support families in distress. That sounds a joke now, but that's what they were formed for. And alas, gradually, even the vice chair of the Association of Social Workers, Maggie Millen, has said it's all turned into child protection. As she says, we'll be looking back perhaps in 30 years' time, and she's a social worker, a chief one, we'll be looking back in 30 or 40 years' time in horror at what we're doing now, just as we look back now at all those 150,000 British children who were sent to Australia for forced labour. And we look and say, how could they do that? Because the people who do these things are sincere, but there's nothing so dangerous as a bunch of do-gooders, I often think, you know. People who think they're doing good, they're not. I mean, after all, Catholics and Protestants were slaughtering each other, you know, and even, for a difference in dogma, and both very sincere, I'm sure. But and even the concentration camp guards at Auschwitz were probably sincere. They really thought they were doing the right thing, wiping people out and sending them to the gas ovens, because that's what they were taught. So it doesn't mean because you think you're doing good, you are doing good. And so now we've got the state-of-the-art social workers. If you were, you heard a social worker come to your next-door neighbour and she was out, and you said to her when she came back to a single mum with a couple of children, you said, "Oh dear, yeah, a social worker came to see you." Now, she wouldn't say, "Oh dear, what a pity, I wish I'd met her." She'd say, "Oh my God, she's after the children." And that's what it's come down to, from support when they were first formed to stealing the children for a second.
Can we have respect for the speaker, please?
Oh, don't worry.
At the back, talking, stop it or get out.
Oh, I don't don't worry, I never expect anybody to respect me.
No,
I'm not disappointed. No, so I'd like to sort of point out a few things which you can use in future arguments, maybe, with other people. The first one is this, that the UK is the only country in the world where a regular stream of mothers, especially, leave to have their babies in other countries to stop them being taken. Yes, in other countries they do take children. But the UK is the only one where people are driven to leave the country to get out of it, and that is a terrible thing. But it's absolutely true. Also, the UK is the only country, certainly in Europe and probably the rest of the world, where nearly every major town has a family court filled to bursting with people trying to keep their children and failing mostly. That doesn't happen anywhere else. They do take children elsewhere, but that doesn't happen. Yeah.
So, is it just to make money, or is it something?
I shall come on to that and show you why this has happened, and money is the chief reason. But I just wanted to draw your attention to these facts that this happens in the UK as opposed to other places, and that's why people leave. I mean, in France, where I live most of the time, and Monaco, they think I'm exaggerating. They don't believe me when I say that you can take a child at birth from a mother for risk of emotional abuse. I mean, what rubbish is that? But they hardly believe me. It just wouldn't happen in the Latin countries. But there we are. Now, why does this happen? Yeah, it happens because there's, as you put your finger on it, there's money to be made. As it was pretty well presented by Sue Reed earlier, if you were here to hear her, the people who make the most are what they call the adoption and fostering agencies. These are people who supply adoptive parents' addresses and fostering addresses to the local authority. They probably get for a fostering to supply fostering, they don't get one payment. They get about 1,500 quid a week while the fostering lasts, of which they pass on over 500 very generously to the fosterers and keep the balance. The National Fostering and Adoption Agency, for one, was formed about 12 years ago by 2 social workers. Let's start an agency, they said, and they did. And they sold out 2 years ago to a commercial firm called Graphite for 130 million. That's the sort of money that's being made. You will...
Each child is worth £1 million when they drag it through, from start to finish in the 2.5 years of the process.
Well, I put it this way, that the official... I've got on my site the links to various government statistics, and one that is very striking is that the cost on the whole for each child, the cost to the taxpayer for the whole system is £2,900 and a bit more for each child per week, not per month, not per year. So that's going some. Am I just? Sorry? Yeah, I mean, the whole industry is £1 billion industry. Now, sometimes social workers will say, you know, this is rubbish what these people say in public about us making a lot of money. The council doesn't make any money. It has to spend money to put these people into foster care. So why should we do that? And the answer is simple enough. Since when did civil servants care a damn whether the local authority made money? It's when they make money themselves that they care. Of course, the local authorities, councils all over the country are wasting money not just on childcare, but on all sorts of things. The people working for them don't give a damn as long as they don't get into trouble, as long as they feather their own nests and they get massive salaries. When I first came to Ramsgate to run a hotel when I was 22, I negotiated with the town clerk, as he was called then, and he had a salary about double the average wage. Now they're called chief executives, and they get 100,000, 200,000 a year. You see, I mean, it's the greedy lot. Now, not only that, but that's one source of money. The other is this: the private children's homes, as they're called. Now, these cost so much. It's, you know, it costs about nearly £1,000 a week to send Prince Harry to Eton, which has enormous facilities, obviously, because it's the poshest school in the country and the most expensive. Well, children's homes charge at least 3 times that. And who gets the money? The people who run those homes. And where do the social workers get any money out of this? Well, it's their mates, their friends who run these schools and who run these agencies, very often retired social workers or social workers who got fed up with being social workers and decided there was more in business. And then the social workers, other social workers, they recommend the agencies. There's a lot of agencies, so we'll give this child here we're taking from the parents, we'll give it to this agency to sort out a fosterer. And of course, we want a little commission for that. What evidence is there of that? It's pretty hard to get evidence, but we did get it once. A Greek fellow, in fact, his daughter was pretty cute, sort of, when I say that, clever, you know, and she stole the bank statements from her foster carer and gave them to her father, who took them to the judge in court, because these bank statements showed that this foster carer was getting about £440 a week at that time. It was 4 or 5 years ago. And out of that, it was quite clear, 200 went every week to the social worker. So there was the evidence, and the father presented this to the judge. You know, he was trying to get his daughter returned to him. The judge was furious. He said, this proves that this girl, you've trained her to be a thief and you are colluding with her and you're not fit to be a father. And I want this evidence given to me. And he said, I am putting you an order of this court that you should never tell anybody about this. Not anybody at all, or you will be in jail as quick as I can put you. That, I promise you, I'm not making up, that happened. But we knew from that one example that it's widespread, that in fact they do get commissions from agencies which are run by ex-social workers very often. And then they're sold out to commercial companies who are equally quite friendly about giving commissions. So that's, you know, the money angle is one of the reasons. Of course, there are other people. I mean, the judges, the guardians, the psychologists. Now, some of you may not know the psychologists used by the courts very often have no qualifications whatever. How can they do this? Any one of you sitting here could put a notice on your front door and say, I am Annie Smith. I am a top psychologist. I will cure all your mental ills. Come to me. No one could stop you. It's not like being a doctor. You'd get in jail if you said you were a doctor somebody. If you said you were a psychiatrist, you have to be a doctor first. But a psychologist, there are qualifications, but you don't have to have any. You can just set up as one tomorrow if you want. So if you all like to go home, there'll be 200 new psychologists in the morning. that would be quite fun. But yeah.
Another reason why they do this is difficult to divide
Sorry, I switched this damn thing off.
Again, the rich and the poor, the tackle the middle class.
Are they? Yes. What you?
Do you know what? You sound like a lady who needs to go off and do your bloody
Oh, it's
research. Like most families, they've got nothing. They don't know what's going on. This is why we have to put on conferences.
Yeah. What you said earlier was very true. You see, because they do not want the people do not want baby P and Daniel Pelker and children like that, because people don't want to adopt a child that's been beaten up. Those children, as you quite correctly say, are left to die. You get a social worker who's just begun and goes, as happens with baby P's mother, goes to a house and it's smelly. There's a nasty drunken stepfather there and his mate, 2 Rottweilers, and they're both dead drunk. She puts that to the bottom of her visiting list after that, you can be sure. You know, and they just don't want that. But they still look kindly on those sort of people who beat up their children, because baby P's mother, unlike many mothers who've been stopped seeing their children, baby P's mother, of course, was even after his death and everything, she was allowed to see her surviving children in jail. You know, so it's, you know, if you're in with the social workers, and she cooperated and probably helped them in many ways, they don't look down on her. Yeah.
What's the socio-economic background of the people who have their children taken? Is it mainly poorer background?
It's mainly poorer, I would say, but not necessarily. It's people who look vulnerable, I would say. You know, they want an easy target, which is what I was coming on to anyway, because if you cooperate with them, they'll give you the idea, cooperate with us and you'll get your children back. Or we won't take them. It's the exact opposite. They think privately, oh, here's another mug who's going to do everything that we tell them to. We'll soon get their children. This is how I advise people on my site, which is called forcedadoption.com, to deal with social workers. And that is this: ignore social workers.
They're the dustmen.
Don't speak to them. Don't speak to them at all. Don't let them in the house. They have no authority whatever. They can't demand you ask any questions. Tell your doctor, do not release my medical records. They've no right to see them. Do not tell your children, do not speak to strangers, especially if they're social workers, because they steal children. You've got to tell them the truth and deal with them like that. The only thing you should say to a social worker is this, and you should always say this very politely: I'm very sorry, because it costs nothing to apologise. I'm very, very sorry, but I have been advised not to speak to you, so there's the end of it. I'm awfully sorry about that, otherwise I'd love to invite you in. That is all you say. I promise you that's the best thing. And we were talking about civil rights a bit earlier, the previous speaker. I'd like to talk about the civil rights of the children they take. because the worst thing that can happen to a child of 5, 6, 7 or 8, it's worse than babies. They arrive with uniformed police at 6 or 7 in the morning, which is their favourite time, and cart them off screaming for their parents as often as not. And the first thing that happens to them is they have their mobile phones confiscated, they have their laptops taken away, they are isolated completely from family and friends. And then when parents are allowed to go and see them, it's supervised. They mustn't talk about the case, they mustn't show too much emotion, they mustn't talk about coming home, and above all, they must not discuss any abuse they're suffering at the hands of the foster carers. I'd like you to, if you ever talk about this to social workers or other people, make the comparison between Peter Sutcliffe, Dr. Shipman, Mylene Hindley, all these serial killers and murderers. When they go to jail, they're allowed to phone out. They don't have their phones confiscated. Well, they have their mobile phones confiscated, but they're allowed to use the phone out to who they want, once a week at least.
She's still alive, by the way.
Is she?
She's not dead.
I thought she was. No,
She's not dead. And I know that from Hannah.
yeah. On top of that, when visitors come, they can discuss their case and discuss anything they like. So you've got the fact that children of 5, 6, 7, or 8 are treated worse than the very worst murderers in the country. And how can that be right? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Was it John Hurst, the gentleman who axed his landlady to death?
Yeah.
25 years ago, he's won a court case in the European Court of Rights to allow prisoners, rapists, murderers to have the vote. So they're laughing at as long as you can claim that you're a victim, then you are.
Mind you, I can't see many prisoners queuing up at the polling booth somehow. So, no.
He was cocking a snoot
Yes.
at the British people.
Yeah.
And showing that Cameron and the rest of them can do nothing.
Yeah.
European.
But I think it's a terrible thing that the way these children are treated, treated than the worst murderers and serial killers. And the gagging orders, we're supposed to have free speech in this country. How can you have that if you have a gagging order? All right, if you say something, if I say that some of you ran down Piccadilly Circus stark naked singing God Save the Queen, you could sue me for libel, right? Or maybe you'd say it was a good thing, I don't know, but you're protected. There are laws for that already. And the Official Secrets Act protects people giving away our spies in Russia and places like that. You don't need a gagging order to stop people contacting their own children. Especially, even if somebody's convicted of an offence against children, well, I don't say they should be allowed face-to-face contact, but to ban people from sending emails or anything like that is pretty far-fetched. When you get people jailed who've never committed any crime against a child for waving at them in the street as they won't go past, as one man was jailed for, sending a birthday card, or like Vicky Haigh, who I can name because she was named in Parliament, she was stopped from seeing her child, and she hadn't seen her for 2 years when a car drove up at a petrol station where she was doing some shopping, and in the car was the father and her daughter. She went over to say hello, and for that she was given a sentence in jail 3 years, not 3 days, 3 years, for speaking to her daughter. No one convicted her of any crime. What she had done was accuse the father of sexual abuse of the daughter. Well, she didn't accuse it. The daughter accused him, went to the police, and the police said, do you believe her? And the mother said, yes, that was her crime because he was an Olympic athlete, and there we are. Anyway, had more. But the point is not the rightness of the case, but of the fact that she was jailed for speaking to her. And then she was later jailed again because her new partner had 2 children, and they wanted to send a birthday card to this lady's daughter, to Vicky's daughter. And she said, well, I can't write anything. You can write what you like, and I'll give it to the vicar, and he'll pass it on. He didn't. He passed it to the police, and she was jailed for a day just to keep her a lesson. The card never even got sent, just for giving it to the vicar. So,
what happened in Jane's case when the dad contacted her through the internet, Jane got the blame, didn't she?
Oh, yes, yeah, I mean, these things happen. So then the answer is, I think I've shown a little bit of what's gone wrong and why it's gone wrong. So what can you do to put it right? Now, you know,
Can I say something here?
Yeah.
And it's for everybody to know this. Prisoners have every right. They have more rights than kids in care.
Oh, far more.
They get their contacts, they can write the storybooks for the kids, they can do phone calls, they get the contacts. What has a kid got? And he's not even committed a crime, that kid.
Yeah.
They've got no rights whatsoever. So what Ian is saying is very good.
It's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But now Maggie has suggested saying, you know, what we've got to do is march down the street, thousands of people. Well, you know, it makes you feel good, but I don't really agree. I don't think you change the law that way. You've got to say what you want.
can't sit on Facebook all day long.
No, no, I didn't suggest it, did I? Up to
What
now.
are you going to do?
That was exactly what I was going to tell you. I've campaigned saying definite solutions. I never believe in any criticism in business or in life unless you've got a better solution. If you haven't, shut up. And this is well, I was trying to tell you.
Go on.
But this is the first thing. You have to campaign for something definite that has no ambiguity, that can't be misunderstood. And one simple change in the law could do that, and that is to say, to try and get the politicians to pass a law saying that no child can be taken from its parents unless a parent has been convicted, not accused, but convicted of a crime against children, a significant one. Nearly all the people who telephone me, and I get a minimum of 2 or 3 a day, and generally mostly a dozen, and 2 or 3 of those are always new ones, and then they're follow-up ones. Well, I just give advice by telephone. I don't wave a magic wand, but I do get quite a few people off. That's children back to them. If this is the case, most of those children would never have been taken. I don't say that everybody who commits a crime should lose their children, and certainly only if they've committed a crime, a serious crime against children. But the vast majority, I'd say 99% of the people who phone me, they've never done anything. The people who really beat up children, they don't go to people like me. They don't go to courts. They never go to the court to a Baby P's mother certainly wouldn't have gone to court if he survived and say, give me my darling child. People like that who beat up children give courts a very wide berth indeed. So that is one practical change to the law. They should also abolish gagging orders, because we believe in free speech. If you say something bad about someone that isn't true, then they'll sue you. You know, you're protected. In America, the United States, that is part of their constitution. So it's no good saying it's not practical. It is, because there's 200-300 million people who are using it. Yes, sir.
In the meantime, I think, because, as you said, the people they take children from are generally vulnerable, strength in numbers, you know, if we connect up with a community of people, if we were a community,
I think you've got to connect up with the politicians. You know, if say 2,000 people walking in the street is one thing, but 200 outside the front door of a member of Parliament, that's more effective. I don't say that you should just do it by yourself, but you know, you've got to target the people who can change the law. That is how laws always get changed. In fact,
understanding of the law. I mean, there's a real lack of knowledge about the law. And as you said, a lot of people don't even know that you can tell the social workers to...
No, they don't. I mean, I often, people say, well, I didn't know that. They have no authority. And I'll repeat it again in case people didn't hear it. A social worker has no authority. The man who empties your bins can probably get you fined if you dare put food in where the newspapers are supposed to put. You know, a traffic warden, if you park your car in the wrong place, can get you given a ticket. A social worker can't even do that. They have no authority at all. It's all bluff. And nobody should give way to threats. Not only about children or from social workers, but threats from anybody about anything. If somebody's got to threaten you, they're not worth talking to. You either do it or you don't do it. You don't threaten people. You shouldn't. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was in a hate convention case, and the judge chose
Okay, I'll wind up.
to avoid human rights, all of the Human Rights Act, and he chose to avoid all of the rights of the child, and said that he wasn't actually there for the best interests of the child.
Yeah.
One reason
Well, that is dead against the top case, Neulinger and Schirach, which says that in spite of the Hague Convention, the first duty of a judge in the European courts is to look at the welfare of the child where it's best, and that is the Grand Chamber, which is like the Supreme Court in England. It's the Grand Chamber is the equivalent in Europe. So I've got to wind up now.